um, you're thinking about diving into the God of the Woods, but maybe not sure if it's worth all the time, you know.
Yeah.
It is a long one, almost 500 pages, jumps around in time, tons of characters.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. It's definitely a commitment for the reader, but I guess to get right to your question, is it worth it? Well, I'd say if someone is looking for a thriller, one they can just blaze through. This one probably isn't it. But if a reader really likes those mysteries, the kind that are rich in detail, especially ones that really get into the lives of women and how society kind of pushes and pulls them,
Yeah.
then The God of the Woods, yeah, that might be right up their alley.
Okay, that's really helpful. So more about the characters than just the plot.
Yeah.
Now, what about the writing itself? I've seen some reviews that love it, and others, they call it like verbose and meandering. Can you, I don't break that down a little?
Sure. Liz Moore, she's known for her style, really drawing you in. There's this one part talking about the Adirondacks. It says, the woods themselves were vast and unknowable, a tapestry woven from shadow and silence. Now that's pretty evocative, right? But I can definitely see how, for some readers, it might feel like it's slowing down the story.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. Me, I like when authors get descriptive, but I know if I'm really wanting to like fly through a book, it could get annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, there are all those different points of view, right? Like 7 of them. Does that even work, or does it just become a jumbled mess?
It's definitely ambitious, you could say that.
Yeah.
Moore uses each of those viewpoints to create a bigger, more complicated picture of what happened, especially because the mystery at the heart of it, Barbara Van Leeur disappearing, it all comes down to putting together these little bits of memory, these stories that don't always line up.
So how does that actually work in the book?
Mhm.
Like, can you give me an example?
Okay, so you've got chapters from Alice, Barbara's mother, and she's dealing with her own trauma from the past, and in the present, she just feels so helpless. And then there's Louise, a counselor at the camp. She gets almost obsessed with figuring out this case. And it's not just about them seeing the mystery differently, it's also about how, women back in the 70s, what they had to deal with, all the pressures from society.
Gotcha. So it's not just there to make it more complex, those different perspectives. They actually like build up the characters and get into all that stuff about what society expected from them.
Exactly. And there are chapters from the men too, which, shows the other side of it, how the power was all messed up back then. But some critics say that some of the women, like Alice, they seem kind of passive, even, foolish. Now, is that more messing up, or is she doing that on purpose to show how women were kind of forced into certain roles? That's up for debate.
Wow, that's interesting. Makes you think about what the author was really trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Is she like criticizing those old ideas through the characters, or is she accidentally making them seem even worse?
Yeah.
I guess I'd have to read it to really know.
Yeah, definitely something to think about while I'm reading it. Now, before we go too deep into all that, you mentioned this book being, kind of demanding. Besides the writing style and all the different perspectives, is there anything else that makes it a tougher read?
Well, the book, it's not afraid to be complicated. You've got this whole web of relationships, family secrets that go way back, and then always like looming in the background, there's the Adirondacks,
Mhm.
more almost makes it like another character. It's so present.
Right, right. It's not just where the story happens, it's like part of the story.
Mm.
I remember reading a review that said every chapter starts with a date. Is that to help you keep track? Because it does sound like it could get confusing. Exactly. You really need those dates, especially because Moore jumps back and forth between, the 1950s when Barbara's brother Bear disappears, and then the 70s with Barbara's case.
So you're not just reading it straight through chronologically.
Yeah.
That could be really cool or really annoying. It just depends on the reader, I guess.
It all depends on what you're looking for. Like if you like putting the pieces together, figuring out how stuff from the past connects to the present and the way it's structured, that works really well. But if you're someone who wants things laid out in order, start to finish, yeah, it might feel kind of choppy.
Good to know. Now, you were talking about comparing The God of the Woods to other books. I always like to see how the book stacks up,
Yeah.
Helps me figure out if it's something I'd like.
Oh, for sure. One that comes to mind is Long Bright River, also by Liz Moore.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one's good. It's about the opioid crisis, right?
Mhm.
Really different topic.
True, yeah. But they both really get into the lives of women, how they struggle against like all the stuff society throws at them. In Long Bright River, it's two sisters, and they're on opposite sides of that whole opioid thing, but there's that same attention to detail, that immersive quality we talked about, and it really digs deep into like what's going on in their heads.
Interesting. So even though the stories are different, The way she writes and that focus on women,
Yeah.
that's similar.
Exactly. Another book that has some things in common, especially the setting, is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager.
That's the one about the summer camp, right? Some dark secret.
Yep. And while The Last Time I Lied is more, straight up thriller, it also plays with those ideas of hidden secrets, that creepy feeling that something's wrong, even though everything looks perfect on the surface. Both of them tap into that, like, primal fear of the unknown, but The God of the Woods, it's more literary. Sager, he goes for those twists and turns to keep you on the edge of your seat.
So it's more about the atmosphere and getting inside the characters' heads than just like jump scares and surprises.
Yeah, exactly. And if someone is into those historical mysteries, family secrets, the past coming back to haunt you, that kind of thing, Kate Morton's Homecoming, that gives you a similar vibe. It's set in Australia, so it's a totally different place. But both of them use these two timelines to unravel a mystery that goes back generations.
I loved Homecoming. Morton, she's amazing at creating that like gothic, creepy atmosphere. But it sounds like The God of the Woods might be even more focused on the characters, really getting into the minds of these women.
You got it. That historical context, it's important in both. But in The God of the Woods, it's almost like all that stuff from the 70s, how society was back then, it becomes a character itself. It shapes what these women do, even their whole destinies.
That makes it feel more like relevant to today, I think. We're still dealing with a lot of those same issues
Yeah.
about what women are supposed to do, all that. Okay, so some good comparisons there. What about the ending? Does The God of the Woods wrap things up nicely?
Ah, the ending. Well, that's one of the things people talk about the most, and opinions are pretty divided. Some people think it falls flat, while others, they really like the realism, how it leaves some things open-ended.
Okay, you've got me curious, but I don't want any spoilers.
Yeah.
Could you give us a sense of what those reactions are without, giving anything away?
Let's just say Moore doesn't tie everything up in a neat little bow. There are some questions that don't get answered, some loose ends. Some people, they hate that. They want a clear ending. But
Yeah.
others, they find it makes you think. The book stays with them. They keep thinking about those characters and what they did long after they're done reading.
So it's not like everything is perfect and happy at the end, huh?
Yeah, I can see how that would be, I don't know, some people would love it, others not so much. But I kind of like that it's like real life. Things don't always get solved so easily. Maybe a book like that sticks with you, makes you think. Maybe that's more powerful in the end.
That's it, yeah. And that brings us back to, I guess, where we started. Is The God of the Woods worth your time? If you're looking to just escape, a fast plot, everything wrapped up neat and clean, then maybe not. But if you're the kind of reader who likes stories that are really about the characters and writing that, creates a whole mood and books that deal with complicated stuff, not just easy answers, well, then The God of the Woods, it's definitely worth a look.
I think we've covered a lot. Really helpful stuff. I especially like hearing about those other books to give me a good idea of what to expect.
Happy to help. It really comes down to you, what kind of reader you are. But hopefully with this deep dive, you've got enough info to decide. Definitely do. And even if someone decides, The God of the Woods isn't for them, I think there's something we can all take away from this. All that talk about how the women are portrayed in the book, even if the author didn't mean it that way, it reminds us to think about, like, what we bring to our reading.
Yeah.
How does all that stuff from back then and even now about what's expected of women, how does that affect how we see the characters, their choices?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's always good to think about not just like what's written on the page, but how our own views shape what we think about it. And that's what makes these deep dives so cool, right? We're not just giving a book report. We're trying to start a conversation, get people really thinking about this stuff.
Could have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into The God of the Woods. It's been great talking about this book with you. And to everyone listening, happy reading, no matter what you choose.